Hi, you all, and welcome to the first podcast of Voices of the Logistics Planet. So, where we deep dive into the world of logistics, uncovering its many layers through the voices of industry professionals. And today we have a huge privilege hosting a truly fascinating guest. He is one of the few real life last mile experts specializing in parcel lockers and PUDO and so many other things. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Marek Rozycki. So, Marek, it's really good having you here.
Thanks very much. A great pleasure, especially that it's the first episode. And I know that you've got a really, really cool topic. So I'm really looking forward to just getting into it.
Yeah, it's a really great one. I know that you have a lot of, as you're one of the, I would say, the innovators in the PDOs and parcels, thing in last mile. So, I think maybe let's start with the fascinating thing of yours. Maybe you have something to say, some interesting stories in this field. And of course, those fields we're going to talk about green logistics. So I think this will be related in some case. Yeah.
I think Thomas and viewers, yes, I'm passionate about the last mile to the degree that I like to share this joke, which is a little bit more true than perhaps it should be. My wife says to me quite often that she'd be less worried if I talked about other women instead of talking about metal boxes all the time. So, yeah, I am passionate. I was privileged to be involved in some of the coolest projects in the industry. So, probably the two that spring to mind, maybe the three, would be Amazon Logistics, where I was part of the startup team. And that was great
Nice.
because I got an opportunity to put together e commerce and last mile. The second claim to fame, as it were, I have in this space is that when Advent asked me, I was the guy who said that impost was definitely something they should look into. So I think that's also a very cool topic, and impost is a whole big story in its own right. And maybe the third story, not so well known, that I have my own entrepreneurial experience setting up my own small courier company that grew to be big. And that company today is DPD Polska, which is the number one to door carrier in Poland. So that's my credentials, Thomas. Let's go talk about the interesting topic that you had.
Great, nice. So, for of our viewers, who want to, you know, get to know more about Marek and his business, you can see the link here. You can just, enter there. There are a lot of great topics inside there. I know Marek has his own blog on various channels, so I think you will have, all those great things there. So, just go there. And yeah, so today we're going to talk about thing that is, I would say, quite interesting there. Here in this world is greenwashing in logistics. So we have a lot of talks about greenwashing in consumer goods, but talk about logistics. I would say it's quite a topic of side. Yeah, so no one is really talk about this. So Mark, I just will shoot you one opinion that you can challenge. So I don't know if it's true. What do you think? So I say that I do not say that I believe in this, but let's put it right in this way. So I'm saying that 98% of logistics companies aren't generally sustainable, even though they market themselves as such. Do you agree with this statement, or you
Well, oh, that's a
like to
good one. I
challenge?
think had you said 30 or 40%, I'd have agreed. But the
Okay.
reality is that actually there are quite a lot, or certainly a lot more, that are sustainable. And you won't be surprised to hear, Thomas, that the ones that are sustainable are mainly not the ones that talk about the electric vehicles and so on, although that is part of it. It's the ones that have out of home delivery. Because we did quite a lot of work on this, and there's debate still, but nevertheless, in an efficient out of home network, out of home being either parcel lockers or PUDO points. So if it's proximate, well managed, in an urban area, we believe that it reduces the carbon footprint by about 2/3, and even more in a rural area. So that's why I say that any company efficiently operating an out of home network, so, an obvious example will be InPost in my home country, um, is actually not greenwashing.
Okay.
Um, what Thomas is disappointing, and as you know, we have last mile experts have a report called the Green Last Mile Report. This year, we're actually going to change it to the Innovation Report incorporating Green Last Mile. And one of the reasons is people are not walking the talk. we were getting projects, and honestly, some of them were, I wouldn't say greenwashing, but they were very tenuously green. In other cases, people were really frightened because I don't know if you're aware of this. The EU have introduced new legislation to say that if you state that you're green, you have to be.
Okay.
And suddenly, half of the people that were sending applications stopped because they realized that actually they were not as green as they perhaps presented themselves. So I think it is an issue. And I think the issue is that until the consumer starts saying, I prefer a green option and I'm prepared to actually financially support that, it isn't going to happen.
Hmm. Okay, so yeah, so I understand, don't agree with that, but if we put this, let's say in a broader perspective, what is a green, transport or logistics company? Yeah, so it's not only, reduce CO2 emissions, of course, it's also company's culture, diversity, and other things. So, my other question would be, is this, if talking from all the perspectives, not only CO2 emissions, but also from the company culture perspective, is this possible? Is it possible even to as a logistics company would could be as 100% sustainable? So let's take driver issue. Yeah, so we need then we if we look at sustainable things, they would then we need to have, let's say, 30, 70%, 30 percent of women, on driver side, maybe on management side, so and all other things, working conditions, not sleeping in maybe in the trucks, of course in last mile it's maybe not an option, not an issue, but we're talking about the long hauls, this, all those things. What's opinion, or your opinion on that?
So, well, I think that goes beyond green. That's ESG. And if we take the whole ESG picture,
Yeah.
then yes, of course, there's a lot that can be done. The issue that we face today is the only way that most of the operators are able to achieve financial efficiency. So, effectively, giving the consumer a price that is acceptable for, let's be very honest, quite a difficult job means you're outsourcing. So, with the exception of postal operators, most of the private operators outsource the drivers, which means, of course, you avoid a lot of the work and labor related issues. So you can actually offer an effective and efficient product, but of course at the cost of the subcontractors. So yes, I think there are players that take this seriously and try to find a compromise. There are players that are fairly ruthless. I won't name names because I don't think it's the time or place. But yes, I think a lot can be done. But again, a lot of that comes back to us, the consumer. If the consumer clearly says, okay, I want to work with a company that is 5 star on ESG, and I'm prepared to accept that it might cost me a bit more, or that it might mean that I have to wait a little bit longer for my product, it's going to work. The reality, Thomas, is that with the exception of some of the Baltic Rim countries, unfortunately, the reality in most places, I believe, is such that the consumer at the end of the day is going to say, all is great, up until the moment that I pay more or I have to lose some of the customer centric features I want.
Yeah, so really a good point, because I work with logistics businesses. I also we do conduct some polls, shipper polls, ask them, if they would, pay more for logistics company for green and greener products. And still at the moment, the thing is that many of them aren't prepared to do this, but they are requiring, they want. So we have there here a situation where we have some push from the governments. Yeah, logistics companies, of course, they're interested in this as well, but monetizing it's still quite hard. Yeah. So, and what to do here? So what to do here? Is it, what do you see? What options logistics company
You know
would
what?
have?
To be honest, I think that one important thing is education, and sometimes e-commerce are educating in the wrong way. So I will give an example. Amazon spoil us. They allow us to have ever faster delivery, ever more features for uneconomic pricing. And the reason they can do it is they have a bundle. If they make €1,000 from you on a camera that you've bought, they can afford to cross subsidize on something else. Most operators cannot do that. So, I think that Education should come from the e-commerce player, from governments, from other stakeholders like non-government organizations that are involved and care about these issues, and people like us, industry, should we say, specialists who understand the issues behind it. So there isn't a quick fix, but I think just the fact that we're talking about it, if people will listen, of course, that's a starting point.
Yeah, that's a good point here. So if we agree, that is very important. We have government push. The other thing is, which I was also want to discuss with you is the thing that, many believe that, if I have a electric truck or van, I will be green, But I think that there are many other ways to reduce the CO2 emissions, like with effective logistics network, like parcel lockers and other things. So what do you think? Which is more important? Is the electricity more just adding up thing, and all the logistic networks and the other operational parts are more important in reducing, or which part is more important for you, in your opinion?
Thomas, it's a really good point that you raise, Thomas. I think that, and in fact, if people read the Last Mile Experts Green report, you'll see that it isn't just about the electric vehicles. In fact, the electric vehicles, of course, they can help, but there's a lot of simple stuff that can be done first. So just by educating drivers not to put the foot down on the gas, not to perhaps have the air conditioning on full power with a window open, not to, operate in a way that is needlessly careless for energy, that can help a lot. So I think just by educating the drivers, the warehouse people, the customer, a lot can be done. And that's, should we say, efficiency or green efficiency for nothing, almost, because that's really easy to do. But people need to understand that, if it's a driver, that putting your foot down and getting there 0.1 second faster doesn't really make a difference, but it does make a difference in terms of the green footprint. Educating the customer, do you really need your parcel to be there today? Can it be tomorrow? Can you consolidate parcels? Can you order them to an out-of-home point rather than home delivery? Because, people don't think about this, but home delivery, imagine the difference, Thomas. If I'm delivering to a parcel locker, it's like a B2B delivery. It's guaranteed the locker will be there. It's easy to drive to. It's easy to park. You'll deliver several parcels in one go. If I'm delivering to someone's home address, especially in our part of the world, we have a lot of apartments, not always very well signposted. So the driver has to find the place, which will take petrol and time. Has to find a place to park, which will take, again, petrol and time. If he's or she is lucky, they'll easily get to the building. But if they're unlucky, there's going to be some doorbell along the way. Gated community, so they have to get in. And if they're really unlucky, they get to your apartment and you're not there, and they have to do it all over again. You never get that with a locker or Pudo, because 100% successful drop-off. The question, will the customer collect? But reality is, with out of home, that it's usually about 99% collection. So, a lot of education elements can make things a lot greener. Now, can an electric vehicle be better? Of course it can. But I don't believe that's the game changer. The game changer is all those other efficiencies. Electric is the cherry on top of the cake, but it's not the cake.
Yeah, yeah. So good point, because I don't know, basically also came from, originally came from a manufacturing company that produced biofuels, so I'm quite in those, all the things of green things on CO2 emissions. And, I think there was a study, and I'm thinking, what's your opinion on that? That in later on, because green, the climate change is here. We can't do this, anything, so some can, argue with that, but I think it's quite clear here, yeah. And the thing is that if you want to be 100% sustainable, or reduce the CO2 emissions to the levels that we wouldn't cause some tremendous climate changes in the future. Of course, they will be there already, but to reduce them, so we will have to move away from the thinking that receive the same day. So maybe we'll need to walk more. Maybe even the deliveries will change. Maybe the logistics chains will change. Maybe we'll have longer deliveries, not same day, 3 days, maybe longer ones. And what's your opinion on that? Maybe this is the thing that will happen in the future. Of course, of course,
Clearly,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think clearly people need to accept that delivery is when it's really needed, not faster because they want it faster. So in most cases, it's possible to be fairly efficient in a standardized network with next day delivery. So that's not a problem. It's the same day that becomes more difficult and less efficient, because the way the next day delivery works, I don't want to sort of get into too much detail because I don't know how many logistics people we've got here.
There are a
But
lot. There will be a lot.
all right, cool. Well, look, with a same day delivery, you have to make a dedicated drop, and it's not necessarily one parcel per route, but it's going to be limited because it's a fast delivery and it's almost like a point to point type service. With a next day, you have a standardized route, a milk run type route for the driver, much, much more efficient. Now, of course, if that route is to Lockers or Pudos, it's even more efficient because of what we discussed earlier, that it's going to be more or less 100% successful delivery, and the driver will deliver maybe 30, 40, 50 parcels per stop. And just to give you an idea, I don't know if you've ever had a discussion on this, but do you have any idea what an efficient to-door courier can deliver in a day in terms of numbers of parcels?
I don't know. I'm more in sales and marketing, but just I can guess.
What would your guess
Using
be?
the guy, with the van. Yeah, how many deliveries they
Correct.
can, how many deliveries? So in, let's say, 300.
That would be almost amazing. The best Amazon driver I ever had did about 200.
Okay.
And that was on a very dense route because remember, you're having to go on average for a to-door delivery B2C, it's going to be about 1.2, 1.3 parcels per stop. So that would mean the person in one working day would have to do 300 individual stops or 280, whatever it's going to be. So that's an awful lot, including you driving there, parking, getting to the door, waiting for the person to come. So 300, I think, would be very, very difficult. The reality is a good driver will do probably something in the region of 150 in an urban route,
Okay.
maybe even a very good driver. Typically, it's going to be around about 100 plus minus. Now, I won't ask you because this is unfair what a very efficient locker courier will deliver. So I actually spoke to, and I regularly speak to my local parcel locker courier, and hopefully this will shock you a bit. On a bad day, so remember, we're comparing with 100 to 150. On a bad day, he will do about 850 parcels per day. On a good day, he'll do over 1,400.
Okay. So it's a lot.
So it's more than 10 times. Typically, it's going to be more than 10 times what he can do to door. So that's huge efficiency. And that efficiency is not just operational and financial, but it's also ecological because he's able to deliver in one stop so many parcels. One of the arguments, by the way, for people who don't like lockers is, yeah, but somebody has to go to the locker to pick up the parcel.
Yeah, I want to try this one as well. So you just overrun on me.
And that's why I said, Thomas, it has to be a very efficient network, because a very efficient network will be slipper distance. That's a phrase, not mine, it's a phrase from bpost. Slipper distance means the locker is so close to your door that it's like a home delivery. You don't have to specially go there. So it's so close, you go there in your slippers. Or in the case of my nearest locker, it's on the way. I cannot go anywhere without passing it. So I don't have to make a special trip.
Mhm.
So with an efficient network, it's irrelevant because people will go past that locker anyway. Even with a less efficient network, if people are rational and they're ecologically minded, they'll do something called trip chaining. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
Yeah, I heard that. They will do everything, on the way there. So
So
it's
exactly. So they'll trip chain. They'll do something where they're going anyway, and on the way they'll pick up the parcel. So in reality, my feeling is, particularly with an efficient network, uh, you can eliminate this issue of someone specially going to the locker. So it really, really is pretty effective. Um, but, I think, Thomas, that the most important thing is here in our minds. The more that we care, and not just talk, and I know we had a discussion before, you and I think, really do care.
Yeah,
In the Baltic Rim, a lot of people do as well. Unfortunately, you go further south to places that are less affluent,
yeah,
it's less, should we say, rigorous in terms of that feeling. And one example, I won't mention the country, but there's a country that I love and I spend a lot of time in, and
yeah.
they have actually segregation of items. And it makes me cry. In the building I live in, we have items segregated. And then I see what happens. Those three bins are actually thrown into one communal bin. So the segregation is, we call it photomontage in Poland. So, I think there's a lot more that can be done, but there is one other thing, and I'll mention a company from the Baltics. So I really, really believe that another powerful tool is what's being done by Vinted. So they're revolutionizing the way we think. And, it's not just the last mile. The last mile is important, but I can't remember the data, but the number of liters of water that's used just to produce a t-shirt is incredible. So if that t-shirt or other item of clothing can be reused, wow. And I love what Vinted do because they give a second lease of life to clothes that aren't always necessarily damaged or old. It could be that, I don't know, my tummy grew a bit too big, or somebody didn't like the item, but it's actually almost new and someone else might like it. So I think that's not really last mile related, although the guys at Vinted are very clever in their last mile. That's the subject for a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, because I know that they're earning quite good from this part, and even if I'm from Lithuania, and I first time in top logistics companies in Lithuania, which is made by by publishing house here. There's Vinted. You can find Vinted there, so it's quite amazing, what they're doing. So
Well, the interesting story, Thomas, is that the Vinted has the department that looks at the shipping is called Vinted Go,
yeah,
and all the guys I know there, I think, are from Amazon. So it's the number of people that have got really expert experience is fairly limited, and they go around. I won't say a little bit in circles. Maybe it's a virtuous circle, but I think Vinted have done something really, really well. They've understood that the last mile is an important part of the ecosystem, and they brought it together. Uh, Much to my surprise, other players, so for example, eBay was one of the first kids on the block.
yeah,
They bought in the 90s, I think, a company called Shuttle. And I thought, hey, the guys have got it. They could have really created an ecosystem. Never did it. The other one from our part of the world is OLX. Same story. Um, they focus on the web page, on the customer. They don't focus on actually the difference between retail, which is the last mile. Because, Thomas, if you think about it, what is the difference between an e commerce sale and a retail sale? The difference is that it's delivered via a third party courier or locker. And I find it incredible that players don't really. Amazon gets it, and that's why Amazon invested in Amazon Logistics. But a lot of them don't get it.
yeah. In which business are you in? Is it logistics or retail? So this is quite mixed these days, and it's quite, quite fascinating how many much more value propositions can come out of this. But so if we agree, yeah, I think we agree together with you that green logistics is important. There are ways already today to do that. Of course, we need to fix the mind, and then of course, one way or another, if let's say we will there, we will have more eco consumers, and they will be banned to travel anywhere. Parcel lockers, I think, are the thing that will stay, because it's one of the most efficient things here. Yeah. So but I want to touch another thing. It's not from last mile, but I just want to hear your opinion. Of course, Europe was, as you said, this part of our world is really eco-conscious. Yeah. So now is China becoming, of course, they're also doing what's available for them. Yeah, because it's a huge country. But now what we hear from especially what will happen in Germany, other countries, they I'm hearing talking with other companies that politicians are a little bit worried that they will try to move away in the future from the green deals. So because Europe is becoming not so very economical country to be in and do business. So what do you think on this? Can this somehow in a worst case to impact the green things, or maybe the green things can become self-sufficient, cheaper than the fossil things still, and change the environment, and many will do this in the future. What's your opinion on that?
So, my view is, and I'm not a Trumpist and a guy who loves tariffs, but what I do think is that there should be an even playing field. So, if, for example, I'm based in China and you're based in Germany, and I don't have to have the same environmental controls, which are expensive, as you do, and therefore I'm able to offer something cheaper, I think that's not fair. So, what should happen, in my opinion, there should be an environmental tax which is designed to give a fair playing field. So, if I operate in a market where I have to have additional filters, I have to have additional expensive procedures or processes to be more green, and an alternative player is importing from a country where those processes don't exist, I think there should be an ecological tax to even the playing field. And that money should be then used to create more green projects. So
No.
I think that's the way to deal with it, to make sure that we don't disincentivize the guys and girls who are doing a good job and actually saying, hey, we want to be green, um, by creating an unfair playing field. But at the same time, if you think about it, we incentivize the guys, and I say loosely China because it's not just China, but
Yeah.
countries in that part of the world, we incentivize them to say, look, you're not paying the tax because you're Chinese or Indian, whatever else. You're paying the tax because you are not following certain ecological standards. If you introduce those standards, then of course that tax ceases to exist. In the same way, I believe that this is more ESG, that there should also be taxes that promote a fair way of operating. So if you're hiring, I mean, child labor, I think should be banned, full stop. But if you're working in a way that is not fair to your employees or subcontractors, there should be a tax to, shall we say, to disincentivize against that. Now, the difficulty, Thomas, with all of these things is, where do you draw the line? How do you create something that is fair and helpful, and not something that becomes so administratively burdensome, which is quite often something the EU is sometimes unfairly, sometimes fairly criticized for.
Yeah. So China, as they're saying, China produces, USA innovates, and Europe, just regulates. So so this is
Well,
the thing.
you know what though, Thomas? I'll tell you something. In my business, and people often get shocked, and I was shocked. I spent almost a year in the United States when I was working with Amazon. And the truth, I don't think there's much anybody can teach Amazon about fulfillment centers. Amazing. I learnt an awful lot. They even have a sort of mini university for how to operate fulfillment centers. On the other hand, last mile, I was absolutely, Thomas, shocked how far behind they were compared to Europe. And I should add, they are the most advanced in the US. So imagine these legacy carriers. So people like FedEx, UPS, who created the new last mile in the I don't know, well, UPS is older, but let's say the 50s, 60s, 70s. Today, I call them legacy carriers. It's people like Vinted Go, Amazon Logistics, InPost, who are actually changing the last mile into the next generation new last mile.
Nice. Yeah, changes are happening really fast. So, okay, we touched a lot. So, but and we touched on the government level. But let's say, let's go back to the, simple transportation companies, last mile providers, so and other general logistics companies. As we agreed with you that there are some that are just really greenwashing, yeah, and nothing to do. I think there's no boundaries at the moment because you can just have one electric car, gas or gas engine, and you can shout that we are super sustainable, So how do you think? What's the ways to just ban those things? Of course, maybe the new regulations which are coming, but it's for the big companies at the moment. So maybe this will be a way, or whether you think maybe we can do something, like last miles, or other market participants in this to ban the greenwashing in the industry.
Well, the reality is that what the EU has actually, I think, stopped most of it. So
Okay.
if you look at what companies are saying, there's a lot less. Um, I won't be rude, so I'll say BS than there was in the past. So I think it's happening. And by the way, I think this is a good thing. This is one of the things that the EU should be doing. They should make sure that, Thomas, if my company says something to the consumer, that is correct. Because, very often people get misled. They buy something that they think is healthy or green or this or that. And I actually think it's very important that we should be comfortable that what we buy, what is said on the box is in there. So, and I think this is a role that is important. And from what I understand, the EU has done a good job in terms of greenwashing because it's a lot less prevalent. Now we've got the other extreme that people are frightened to even say anything because they're worried that they'll have to show the evidence. My feeling is, okay, first step has been taken. The next thing that the EU should do, in the same way as local government and other stakeholders, is to actually educate and incentivize.
Yeah.
And I think, there's a lot of talk about it, but I don't think enough happens in that space.
Okay. And just to sum up, what can logistic companies do in this field? Because you know, from marketing perspective, what I'm looking, still the green thing deal is here, yeah. So and some of the consumers and shippers and manufacturing companies are in for that, but I'm seeing that some logistic companies are quite lazy at promoting at selling this kind of service, So what's your opinion? What could those companies do in this field? So just to promote and maybe even earn top coin on their operations.
Thomas, of course, I think the most important thing that any logistics operator can do is to actually walk the talk. Historically, they didn't walk the talk in many cases. Then they stopped talking because they got worried about the restrictions implemented, at least in Europe. And I think what we want now is the next generation where people will happily walk the talk because they know they're doing it. But again, at the end of the day, there's only two ways it can happen. The best way, in my opinion, is the consumer, you and I, say to them, guys, we will prefer the operator that is really green and also that is ethical, all the ESG stuff. And the second thing is the government, I think, can play a role in incentivizing doing the right thing. So, if someone has a green footprint that is genuinely 30% or 40% lower than others, there should be de minimis, perhaps a special green label that operator, can have a special, like you have quality signs, maybe have a green leaf sign.
Yeah,
And
eco
that's
whiting,
easy.
eco whiting, something like
Exactly. Also, you could give tax breaks or other advantages or benefits for people who are genuinely doing that, because the reality is, every bit helps. If we can stop global warming 100 years earlier, or if we can create air that's better, that we're going to have less people dying of air pollution related diseases. Hey, that's really great. But it all comes back, Thomas, to the same thing. Governments need to motivate, and we need to care.
Yeah. So, Marek, thank you. Time flies. So we had a great discussion, and I think that our listeners will have a lot of great insights on this topic. So for those who still want to know what Last Mile Experts doing, so you can visit the page there. So, and thank you, Marek, for the discussion. It was really interesting. And thank you all of you who are listening to us, and join us for other sessions in the upcoming months and days. Thank you. And thank you, Marek, once again.
Thank you, Thomas. It was my pleasure, and looking forward to the last mile being a little bit greener.
Yes, it would be really a good thing. Maybe this will become, a new year, wish for the industry, and not only in Europe, of course, in other parts of the world as well. So,
If I can, before we go, plug one thing. We will be issuing soon. It's not going to be called a green report. It's going to be called Innovation Report, incorporating the green report. And we'd love to hear. So if anyone has projects, particularly innovative ones that are genuinely green, then either catch me on LinkedIn or there's an email address, reports at lastmileexpert.com. You can submit projects there, and then maybe one day in the future I'll be able to talk to Thomas about all the amazing projects that you guys and girls have implemented out there.
nice. So share this with me, Mark, as well. I will send it on to my network. Who knows? Maybe you have some diamonds in there. So unheard, unseen diamonds. So great.
Many
Thank you.
thanks,
Thank
Thomas.
you all.
All the
Bye.
best.
Have
Bye.
bye.